Next up, we have Christine, who is going to be talking about privacy considerations in the context of handoff and continuity. So let's give a round of applause for Christine.
Okay, that looks a little dangerous, but hopefully it stays plugged in. All right, my name is Christine Fossaceca, and again, this is Handoff All Your Privacy. So please turn off your Bluetooth if you haven't already. Otherwise, my demo might not work. Someone did actually mention to add more RAM to my VM, and it worked, so thank you. I think it's a little more stable. So just a little bit about me. I'm currently a senior mobile security researcher at Microsoft on the Defender for Endpoint team. A lot of you may not know that at Microsoft, we actually work to protect devices across all platforms. So in addition to Windows, we have protections for macOS, Linux, Android, and my specialty, iOS. Outside of Microsoft, I'm on the FuriousMAC research team, which specializes in Apple device privacy research, and there's presentations based off of that research. And I'm also a co-host of Her Hacks podcast, which is a podcast by women in cybersecurity for everyone. So we've been doing a lot of preparation on the podcast, and we will release in 4 days, October 11th, which is Ada Lovelace Day. So check it out. It will be available everywhere you get your podcasts. All right. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk to you about what the continuity protocol is and how it works, and talk about our past research. Then I'm going to show you how you can capture continuity data on your own. And then I'm going to dig into the nitty-gritty of different continuity packets so that you can understand byte by byte exactly what information is being collected, distributed, and leaked. All right, and hopefully the demo works. So what information is your iPhone or MacBook giving away about you? iOS and macOS use a variety of protocols that fall under the continuity umbrella and that will share information across users' devices to give you a seamless experience. However, much of this information can either be passed in the clear and sniffed and captured, or even mimicked by other nearby devices. So it's powered via a combination of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and I'm only going to show you the Bluetooth component of it, but an example of continuity would be like resuming browsing from Safari on your iPhone to Safari on your Mac, the universal clipboard, instant hotspot, auto unlock, things like that. So we've done a lot of reverse engineering on this protocol. The first paper was published in 2019, which was called Handoff All Your Privacy. We also did a presentation at ShmooCon in 2020 where we dug into how you set up the capture yourself, and that's where we first presented our custom dissector, which is open source. We also recently published a paper called Who Tracks the Trackers, where we show how to create a counterfeit device. We also disclosed a lot of this information to Apple, so I don't know what happened. We disclosed a lot of this information. I'll move over here. And so okay. Well, I can talk with, okay.
From the refresh speed.
Oh.
We have to download the refresh speed.
Okay.
Do you know how to do it?
So Klassen and Alex Heinrich are in the audience over here, and they've written prolifically on not just continuity, but also a lot of other Apple research. Check out AirGuard, which Alex wrote. There's also OpenHaystack, which helps you create your own AirTag. And there's another research team, INSA, which is in Lyon, France, and they actually did a lot of the other packet parsing information that I'm going to be showing here today. So our original continuity parser was not based off of reversing. It was just like us doing manual testing, but then when they published their paper called Discontinued Privacy, they reverse engineered a lot of the information and compared to the Apple spec, and that gave us even more information. So I'll talk about both of our disclosures. Oh, here we go. Okay, yay, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so that was the slide. All right, so you might be wondering what types of information is being sent in the clear and how are you capturing it? And this is where we have some problems because continuity is actually disclosing pattern of life or like device fingerprinting information. And so from a privacy perspective, that's really bad. So this is just a demo that I was using for something else. So I just wanted to show you what the packets are. So some of the pattern of life information that there is whether or not your AirPods are connected, if Wi-Fi is on or off, if your AirDrop's on or off. It'll even say what iOS version you're on. So we're gonna demo this later so you don't have to worry too much about what's on this slide. And you might wanna know how I'm capturing this. So I'm not gonna go into the whole thing because only 25-minute talk and we just lost a little bit of time, but you can use a Bluetooth hardware dongle such as an Ubertooth, which is what I'm using, or you can use an NRF sniffer. Those are a little bit more reliable, I think, because the antenna is smaller, so it's a little bit easier to do a capture in a big room like this. And then if you go to our repository, which is under FuriousMAC on GitHub, you can see our continuity parser. The hardest part about it is you have to compile Wireshark from source and compile our parser into it, or it's a dissector. And so depending on the platform you're using, it's a little bit difficult. I think what was causing my issues is I'm running a VM right now because I have to do USB pass-through, and I think it's like using a lot of resources. So just can't win. Oh, thank you. I am coming up on there's a break, right? So in my talk, I'm going to explain how you can look at an Apple BLE packet and understand what everything is byte by byte, because even though this is like the generic format for a continuity packet, they actually vary in length and they vary in fields because it's very extensible for different types of traffic, especially if Apple wants to add new types of packets. So the best way to do that is to go through packet by packet. So I have 3 types of packets here that we're going to dissect together. So the first information that we're going to look at is the access address, and this is at a 24-byte offset. So there's a little bit of a difference between classic Bluetooth protocol and Bluetooth Low Energy. And so all BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy packets are going to be tagged with this same exact access address. So I'm just going to ignore everything before that because it's not Apple-specific information, and it's more related to like classic Bluetooth or Bluetooth connection, so that information is not important. The next thing that we're going to look at is the next 2 bytes, which is the packet header. And again, that's also not Apple specific, so we can just kind of ignore that. All right, so the next thing is the advertising address. And like I said before, this is something that comes from any Bluetooth device that you have. So all BLE devices will have some type of advertising address, and you can think of this as the Bluetooth MAC address. So Apple has a specific design specification that requires that any device that is going to be using Bluetooth with Apple needs to rotate the MAC address every 15 minutes. And that's because this Bluetooth MAC address, much like a private Wi-Fi address, needs to stay private. So it's going to rotate every 15 minutes so that if you're going from location to location, you're not beaconing those same 6 bytes. So if you're like a developer and you want to integrate your IoT device with Apple, they want you to also rotate your MAC address or your advertising address every 15 minutes. Not all devices do that, so this is something that Apple does, and it is really good from a privacy perspective. So you'll see these next 6 bytes are the advertising address. Now, when these bytes are parsed, it's not always consistent from the endiness wise. So this is, you swap the endiness, but you don't assume when you're parsing these packets that you're always swapping the endiness. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, so getting rid of all of that. Now we're going to look at the next 3 fields at once, and that's because the field highlighted in blue is actually optional. So when you're parsing this information, you need to know whether or not you have that optional field there. So I'm actually going to skip ahead to the 3rd frame, which is in yellow, and that's because this is always going to be static. So you probably see that string that says FF4C00, and the FF is the manufacturer ID. So all Bluetooth devices that come from different manufacturers can have their own specific manufacturer-specific data that's going to be passed in those later Bluetooth fields. And so the FF flag lets you know that, oh, manufacturer-specific data is coming. If you want to know what manufacturer that is, that's going to be represented by the company ID, and Apple's is 004C, but then when it's the endings are swapped. So something else that's really important to know, if you are running a capture and you're seeing this advertising address and you're seeing information saying, oh yeah, this is Apple traffic, that doesn't mean that it's actually coming from Apple, because like I said before, we were able to easily counterfeit those packets. So just because a device is beaconing that it's coming from an Apple company ID doesn't mean it's actually a legitimate Apple device. It does mean that the Apple framework, Find My framework, will allow you to ride that protocol, so anybody can use the Find My protocol as long as they're beaconing the correct information. All right, so in the first packet, there's only 1 byte, so that's just going to be the length field. And this length is letting you know how much Apple-specific data is being sent in the rest of the packet. So there's 7 bytes. In the next one, you have 4 bytes ahead of it, and so that means that you have that optional field. And then that optional field is just, that's like BLE channel information, so like it's not really Apple specific, so we don't have to go into what it is, but you see that it's hex 10, which means there's 10 bytes of data. And this other packet also has the optional field, and you have 19 bytes of data. So you might start to think, well, how are they leaking all this sensitive information? There's only like 7 bytes available to you, and all of these packets are all of different lengths, so how do you know like what they are, what they're doing? So Apple has implemented the Apple type, and that's one of the first pieces of Apple-specific or manufacturer-specific information. And all of the Apple types correspond to what type of packet is going to be beaconed. So I created this table so that we can figure out what packets we've collected. And these are the Apple message types. So I have it in hex and in decimal, because even though you can see in the packet it's saying hex 12, if you're trying to use any of like the Apple debugging tools, it'll actually present to you in decimal. So you just have to like kind of have those conversions on hand. So I always call type 18 Find My, but when we collect it, it's actually 12. So just for quick conversions. Something else that was kind of funny when we first started doing this research is there wasn't any Find My packets being beaconed, because it was back in like 2018, 2019. But sometime around 2020, I guess, so we would always update the parsers. And Sam Teplov, who's on the FuriousMAC team, this was kind of like his baby. So he was, every time a new Wireshark version was coming out, he's like, yeah, I'm going to port it to the new Wireshark version. And he started noticing that there was this new message type, type 18, coming from his phone. And we were like, oh, we've never seen this before. Like, what is this? It wasn't published in any papers. And so Sam discovered the Find My protocol for offline finding and for AirTags before AirTags were like even mentioned. So that was pretty cool, because that was how we started doing research on creating your own AirTag and writing the Find My protocol before AirTags were released. And what's really funny is TU Darmstadt also did the same thing with their Open Haystack framework. So I think that was even released before AirTags came out, so it was pretty cool. So the next type of message is hex 10, which is type 16, and that's nearby. So nearby is something that I want to dig into, because that is releasing a lot of pattern of life information. And then handoff, remember that's like shared clipboard, things like that. So that is a type C, which is type 12. So let's dig into what nearby messages are leaking about you. So you might think, oh, this packet is pretty small, like how much pattern of life information is actually being shared? And it's about to get even smaller because the next field is another length. So you really only have 5 bytes of information because the last 3 bytes are actually the cyclic redundancy check, so you're losing 3 bytes at the end. So you might be thinking, okay, like you don't have that much space, what could they possibly be beaconing? But it's actually a lot, especially just in the first 2 bytes. So the first byte is actually reserved for future use. It's not even used, so there could be more pattern of life data that's implemented later on. The second one is whether or not your airdrop is on or off. So that means that if your airdrop turns on or off, like I showed earlier, it's just 1 byte, but anybody can see that if they sniff your Bluetooth traffic. The next byte is reserved, and then the next bit is primary iCloud. So what does that mean? So if you're using a new MacBook with a new Apple ID that you just created, your device will not be beaconing any continuity Bluetooth packets. And that's because it's for a continuous, seamless experience, but you don't have a device to share it with. So in our testing, we found that you'll get radio silence from the Bluetooth receiver. But the moment that you log in with that same Apple ID to a secondary device, all of a sudden it gets really, really noisy and you see all of those Bluetooth packets. So primary iCloud is letting you know which device was basically first on the network or on the protocol with your iCloud account. So that's what that bit is for. So the next one is action codes, and this is probably the most sensitive information. So you'd think, oh, there's only 4 bits, like that's not that much, but it's very interesting. So if you take a phone call or use FaceTime, your phone will start beaconing action code 14 saying, oh, this person's like in a phone call. If you get into your car and you start driving, it'll start beaconing action code 13. So from a user privacy perspective, let's say you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're listening to Her Hacks podcast and the audio is playing and your screen is off. Somebody will be able to find you because they'll say, oh, somebody's beaconing number action code 5, and then they can look around and see, well, who's like has their headphones in and is listening to something. Or let's say you're watching some Objective by the Sea videos on YouTube and you're like this, looking at your phone, then they'll be able to say, okay, who is beaconing number 9? And then they can correlate what you're doing with what your device ID information is. It also gives information like whether or not a phone is locked. So if somebody wants to steal your phone and they want to make sure it's unlocked so they can log you out of your Apple ID and resell it, then they can just wait for your phone to be beaconing that 11 active user, which is letting you know that it's unlocked. Or they can, if once they see action code number 7, that's transition idle from locked screen. So whenever your phone is going from locked mode to when you're unlocking your phone, it will start beaconing 7, and then if you let your phone sit on the table and it goes from unlocked to locked, so they'll know their time is running out if it starts beaconing number 7 and they have to wait for you to unlock it again. And that was just information in 1 byte. So let's see this other byte. So there's auto unlock information, which like Face ID unlock or watch unlock, whether or not your watch is actually locked or not, whether or not there's an off tag present, another reserved bit, whether your Wi-Fi is on or off, and whether or not you have a 4 byte off tag, and in this one you'll see we have a 3 byte off tag, and whether or not your AirPods are connected. So what is the auth tag? So an auth tag is actually part of the AES GCM specification, and that just allows you to pass additional information in a continuing session. And so something that we had found out about the auth tags and had reported to Apple was that they were ruining the preservation of privacy in different connections because they weren't cycling the auth tags at the same time as the advertising IDs. So remember, the advertising IDs have to rotate every 15 minutes. So if you're watching somebody's traffic based on their advertising ID, every 15 minutes it's going to cycle, and then you're going to have to figure out what their new one is, but it's really hard to do that. Well, they're also beaconing the auth tag at the exact same time. And if the advertising ID rolls over, but the auth tag doesn't, then you know what their new advertising ID is, and you can continuously track them. So we don't want that. So we did disclose that to Apple, and they fixed it. So the next type of message is handoff. So this one has 14 bytes of Apple-specific data, not including the CRC. And the first byte tells you whether or not there's like a cut or copy performed, because remember that's shared clipboard, stuff like that. There's also a nonce, and then another auth tag. And this one does have an encrypted payload. So you might think, oh, this is great. Like, nobody can get my shared clipboard information. Like, how secure? And from one standpoint, like, yeah, that's really awesome that they're using encryption. We don't want people to know everything you're like copying and pasting. So it won't compromise the confidentiality of the data, but it is still an information disclosure issue because we found out that the nonces were sequential. So that means that if two devices are passing information back and forth, the sequential nonces will let you know that there's this conversation happening and whose devices are correlated with each other. And we don't want that because, again, pattern of life, that it is bad for your privacy. So the last one I'm going to show you is proximity pairing, which is type 7, and that has to do with your AirPods. So if you have AirPods, they will be sending this information at all times. So that's length 25 bytes of Apple-specific data. And so the first one is just the prefix, letting you know that it's starting the frame. The next one is device model. And so if I want to like steal someone's AirPods Pro, all I have to do is wait for their AirPods Pro to come up because we know that they always have the same device strings. So there are some new AirPods around, so if anybody wants to let me look at what your device ID is, I would love to because I want to update the dissector. So the next byte is status codes, and this is a little weird, and I'm going to demonstrate this. So is it functional or is it like spooky? And so from a functional standpoint, remember, continuous seamless experience. If you take one of your AirPods out of your ears, you want your audio to pause, and that's really, really useful. But at the same time, it just is like a lot of information. And earlier when I was testing, I was able to figure out whose data I was seeing because I saw, oh, somebody has one left AirPod in their ear and the other in the case, and I had to like ask them to put both of them in the case. So yeah, this information, I don't know if it's necessarily like good to be beaconing that because it's pattern of life information. And so from my perspective, why don't they just encrypt that? There's also battery levels, and your right AirPod, left AirPod, and case all have different advertising IDs, and so they all have their own battery levels. There's also the lid open count. And so this was actually published in the discontinued privacy paper by INSA in Lyon, France. And they found that every time you opened your AirPod lid, it would increment sequentially. So from a privacy perspective, you don't want to have any static numbers traveling with you. So again, this ruins the privacy preservation of your advertising address rolling every 15 minutes, because yeah, you're rolling every 15 minutes, but then there's like number 32 following you everywhere you go, so people will know, oh, number 32 is Christine, oh, and it just went to 33, so that must be her. So now it's just one for everybody else. Also, again, if you're an iPhone thief and you're preparing to steal something, you might want to know what color the device is. But it's in a case, so how will you know? And lucky for you, all of the AirPods will tell you that. So I have a white iPhone, but you wouldn't know that because it's in a case. But you do know that because my AirPods are telling everybody. So then that's the end of the packet, and then the rest is the actual Bluetooth encrypted data and the CRC. Okay, so I know we're running up on the break, but I'm going to do the demo now. So again, turn off your Bluetooth, please. I will find you if you don't. All right, please work. All right, so I'm going to do a quick demonstration of my AirPods. So both AirPods are in the case, and now I'm taking them out. And so we're going to, it's a little laggy, I think, for you guys. Here we go. So both my AirPods are in my ear. One is out of the case. What's weird is I can put it in my case, and it's going to tell me that too. So if somebody's trying to steal your AirPods, they can, even if they just want one, because like maybe they lost one of theirs, they'll be like, oh, one of your AirPods is still in the case, and just like swipe it as they walk by. So, so if anybody wants to play with this also during the break, it seems like it's working for now. So, or if you have your AirPods and you want to see what yours look like. All right, so just to end, I'm glad I didn't have to use my backup demo because I wouldn't have been as cool. So we are presenting an upcoming paper at Pet Symposium. We're talking about how to prevent people from putting counterfeit AirTags on the Find My framework. So hopefully Apple decides to do something like that. Here's some resources for you if you want to read more about this stuff. And yeah.
Is that honey?
All right. I don't know if we have time for questions. You should have said no. Yes.
For the action codes, how did you work out like the specific description string?
So when we originally did it, we were just testing, so we were like trying to figure out what was going on. So we would look at what bits were changing when we did different things. And then the discontinued privacy paper came out, and they had cited us, but they had a way more verbose collection because they reverse engineered it. So they found a lot of the logging information in Apple's binaries. So yeah, that was super helpful. That's how they found like the lid thing, because we didn't really know that much about the AirPods stuff at the time, because we were just trying to understand phone behavior, and then we were like, oh wow, AirPods is like a whole nother space. So yeah, that's why I love like that other people are doing it, because you can all kind of work off of each other. No problem. All right, I think there's no more questions. Oh no, I missed somebody. Sorry. Somebody had a question? Yes. Oh, and I'll repeat it this time. Sorry, I forgot.
Have you studied any other peer-to-peer Bluetooth frameworks that see if the traffic's encrypted or not?
So the question was, have we studied any other peer-to-peer Bluetooth frameworks and tried to see if the traffic is encrypted or not? And we haven't yet. We were thinking of looking at other like IoT devices like Tile and stuff like that, but we have not looked at that.
Would you mind if I gave you an example to that sometime?
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, Alex, who's sitting like 2 rows behind you, has looked at a lot of other things. So he has his app called AirGuard, will detect different types of Bluetooth data. So he might actually know the answer to that. But if you run, actually, in my other phone I have it. Oh, okay. Yeah, Alex is also a great resource for that. Oh, yes, in the back. Can you, would you mind coming a little closer? Sorry, or do we have a microphone? Because I can't hear. Sorry, thank you.
Hello. In a state of silence, when there is a new Apple device with a single Apple ID that is not associated with any other device, does the host actually parse the incoming beacons? This question is because I'm wondering if a new Mac with a new association Apple ID could actually help the Find My network identify an hypothetical stolen iPhone.
I see. Yeah, so Find My will still work if you like enroll in Find My, because you can use like the browser. But we found that the offline finding messages, which are part of continuity, will not be triggered. So that's actually kind of bad for people who like maybe have an iPhone but no other Apple devices, because in a lot of our testing we were like, oh, we want to capture these offline finding messages from iPhones, and we were like, oh, it's not working. Like, is this device too old? What's going on? And that's when we made the discovery. You have to have at least 2 Apple devices logged in, otherwise it won't trigger. So yeah, that's a good point. So if you have an iPhone and you don't have any other Apple stuff, you can't necessarily leverage offline finding because continuity won't trigger. Good question. That was a really good question.